Carolina's Field, Forest, and Water, a feature of the South Carolina Governor's School for Agriculture at John De La Howe. The student-run podcast is just one highlight of the only ag-focused residential high school in the nation with a history dating back over 228 years.
Hi everybody, welcome to this edition of Carolina Fields, Forest, and Water. My name is William Cutshaw and my co-host today is Garland Wilson.
Our guest today is Tyler Randolph of Marble Technologies. The Marble team has a knack for tough tech. Before Marble, the team worked on scanning technology for airport security, intelligent drone systems, beverage automation, and enterprise software for agriculture.
Today, Mr. Randolph is on campus meeting with us, future Business Leaders of America officers, to talk about the role of AI in the meat processing industry. Thank you for visiting us today, Mr. Randolph. For those listening new to Marble Technologies, could you elaborate more on your company and its mission, as well as your company's role in the meat industry?
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Garland, for both inviting me on here.
Of course.
So Marble, we started in 2021. As you mentioned before, we built a team with a lot of vast, wide experiences, and we pulled from a lot of those different industries. And we're going after this AI technology in the beef world. So we primarily work in the primary processing, harvest side of the business. And that's kind of the area that has been very kind of lacking in technology because of how difficult it is just to survive and deal with it. And so our team really wants to go after the very big problems. And so that's where we decided we're going to put all of our effort and focus on.
When did you first encounter AI, and how did you determine it was the right solution for the meat industry problems?
So early on for Marble, we kind of like to think of ourselves as a software company that also builds hardware. Historically, in the beef world, it has been very hardware driven. There's been amazingly engineered tools and equipment and processes, because the beef slaughter especially it's very old and it hasn't really changed in several hundred years. And so we've seen a lot of trends of people that build hardware in the beef world trying to add software onto it. And so, but we wanted to go on the opposite side. We wanted to be software first, and then we build hardware only where it's actually needed. And so a lot of the people that we worked with, they have a lot of background in the AI, and we knew that anything we were going to go after was going to be heavily software AI driven for the beef world.
Why is AI necessary in an industry that would seem to be functioning just as fine as a hands-on operation?
Yeah, that's great. And so, I would say it's almost exclusively hands-on. And the reason for that is because every piece of meat is different. Unlike a lot of factories where you're building a clock or a phone or something else like that, every bolt looks the same, every piece essentially looks the same. In the meat industry, every animal is different. Every piece of meat is different. And so all of that differences is where AI really thrives. Because fundamentally, AI is really good at finding patterns and finding patterns out of a lot of chaos. And when you're looking at a piece of meat, it's red, it's white, it's got some bone in there, but it can all blend in and all look the same and make it very difficult to understand how I'm going to deal with it and deal with every single action and every piece of meat to a certain degree. You have to treat it separately. And again, that's where a human is really good at. Because again, AI, we're trying to replicate what a human can do. And so the skill, because a butcher is very skilled. I mean, you can cut up a piece of meat, but you can lose a lot of money doing it the wrong way. To be able to do it how the people in the beef industry do it, it is a skilled craft. And unfortunately, it's a skilled craft that we're losing. And we're losing that skill. And so that's why we're trying to see, can we make AI come in and being able to ensure that we don't lose that skilled trade.
All right. So you are a hardware engineer. What are some hardware engineering challenges of AI and robotics that you face in the processing facilities?
Yeah. So the biggest thing on building technology, AI or robotics, or anything that has a wire, a blinking light on it, and a B4 is the fact that it is a very harsh environment to live in. And the number one thing is sanitation. Every single night, this entire facility is completely washed with sometimes millions of gallons of hot water, 140 degrees, high pressure water, and it's all being done at night. And you're putting bleaches on it, you're putting caustics, you're doing all kinds of scrubbing on it. And the technology does not like water. Throw your phone in there, and our phone sometimes says it's water resistant. And always the thing is that yes, a phone right out of the package holds up very well. But really the question is, what does that phone look like after a year of using it? And that's usually where always an issue with technology is that even if you design a piece of equipment and you can do some tests and show that it's water resistant, the real question is what happens when it's aged, it's being used, especially with the hot water. You have gaskets and seals, and those change when they're either hot or cold. Beef floor, usually it's a very cold environment. It's basically a refrigerator. And so you take things that are very cold and then you blast it with really hot water. Well, then you create little gaps, water gets in. So those are the kind of things that even simple little things of like saying, I want to have a camera and look at something. Well, you can get chemicals being built on water droplets, moisture that gets into it, a cable, any little tiny crack, because it's clean, so much water. It only takes one time for you to compromise it, and then you're just chasing problems. So making technology survive in the cleaning environment and the chemicals is probably the number one thing on the mechanical side of it. And the other big one is that, especially like on the fab floor, you got to build things like a tank, because we had make a joke that every single thing is a ladder, everything's a platform. Like when we build cameras and mounts, we literally design it so you can stand on it and not damage it, because we know some people. And so that's usually the thing, is overbuilding this stuff so that it can truly, you can always say, hey, don't do this, and be more careful with it. But you can say it until you're blue in the face. But if it's not going to match really the reality, it's not going to survive. And in the end, the customer won't get the result that they asked for and you promised.
On that note, when a Marble system is installed by a meat processing plant, can you tell us what kind of training is involved for the end user before they're fully operational?
Yeah, great question. And so for one of the things that we've noticed is that AI can be very complicated, and a huge amount of work we do is how can we make it simple? Because when you're actually on a beef production floor, things are running fast. You can't stop. Things are very stressful. And one of the things that we try to do is we try to get a lot of, even our programmers, our AI scientists, we have them come out as part of the installs. Some of it because we want to have them all have exposure simply to the stress and what it's actually like to interact with your equipment when you have orders to fulfill. You've got meat just flowing at you at high speeds, and understanding what was a piece of information that would have been helpful to understand how to troubleshoot something or how to use it. And so that kind of drives a lot, that we have to make things extremely simple to use, where we have to take all the complexity of dealing with AI and we have to be able to solve that in software behind the screens where they don't have to see it and they don't have to have tons of training. It just simply needs to work. And so we usually have several sessions on like the maintenance side where we say, here's the troubleshooting documents. This is how you make sure do certain things. A lot of the deep pieces of AI is dealt with by our team. So in other words, they don't actually have to update new products in the programming. At this stage, we essentially do all that heavy lifting in the background for them. Now, there could be a stage at the point where you could almost, use it yourself and add new products and manipulate things. But because of the complexity of some of the things we're doing, we do that as a service to make sure that the system runs stable. And so that's most of the training is on just the straight maintenance of how to make the systems operate, not necessarily how to manage AI models and annotations and things like that from the customer's front. Because in the end, they just want a result. They don't want a piece of equipment. They don't want a piece of software. They just want a solution.
All right. What would you say was what was the hardest part about getting your name out there and convincing these people that this new technology would benefit them?
Yeah, great question. The beef industry, especially, just like many industries, it's a very relationship building. Um, and that was probably one of the main things that we did for a long time is that we built those relationships both in industry and academia, and talked with a lot of them because you can make a sales pitch, you can send videos, but a lot of these people, unless you actually go to their plants, spend a lot of time traveling the country, sitting in front of them, talking to them, because they want to actually look you in the eye and say, are you just trying to sell me something, or are you actually trying to solve a problem? And they're really good at knowing whether or not you're just doing a sales pitch. And so creating that relationship, but also a lot of it too was that, like for me, I worked for 9 years as a engineer at FPL Food in Augusta, Georgia. So they listened to me when I talked about some of these things because I had I had a background into it. I've seen these things. I've done some of these things. So that's what kind of allowed them to say, all right, I'm going to have that next meeting and have that next, because you have that background. So that was years, having nothing to do with, AI or anything like that. But if I just tried to walk in there with no experience of actually being a plant engineer, it would have been much, much more difficult. And so that's one of those things that, as you do your careers, everything you've done can be building up to something that you might not. Because I never thought, when I started FPL Food, that at some point I'd be pitching new AI technology to other people. For all those times, I was the person on the other side of that table buying the equipment. And so having that perspective helped. And then we kind of went step by step. We had to be able to bring something in a very isolated way that it did not get put at risk their operations. It's a lot of cost that if you stop the plant or things like that. And so then we made jumps of a pilot, and then we put in one line. Then when they saw that work, then we went to an entire plant that was a slower running plant. And then after that, they saw that work, and then we went to another plant that had like 10 lines. And so being able to do that step by step, showing that, yes, it didn't just fail day one, that we can do this repeatably, it's what's putting us in a position where they say, all right, this is actually technology that survives, because they have seen a lot of things that they tried it, and after 6 months and a year, it just never keeps working. And so and that's part of the startup world, is that you have to be able to build enough time into your business plan to create that reputation of just consistency before things can really take off.
When people think of AI, they can be concerned about AI replacing jobs. Could you share a little bit about your experience with it, with the labor market and the meat processing industry, and how Marble addresses those labor problems?
Yeah. Definitely heard a lot on those kind of questions. I've heard it said before, and I totally agree with it from a high level, is that AI might not replace you, but someone who knows how to use AI probably will. So AI is just a tool. It's one of those things that can see a lot of patterns, look at a lot of information that's very difficult to consume, and be able to spit that out consistently. So one of the things that we're seeing, especially in the meat industry, is that there's a lot of labor shortages in this industry. Almost every plant is running understaffed where they would like to be. And also it's a consistency of those same people show up every single day. Part of what you run as a beef plant is you literally every morning, you have to look at who actually checked in and clocked in that day. And then you have to most of the time, you have to redo your whole plan just on saying, hey, did these certain people didn't show up, or they called in sick or something like that? Because you're always running, and then you're trying to reallocate labor to be able to do the best you can that day. And I can tell you, the day after the Super Bowl, just assume there's going to be a lot of called out sick people. And so things like that, you have to be able to deal with that labor realities. Another big piece of it, especially the beef side and the fabrication floor, it's cold. It's a cold environment. It's very physically hard work, repetitive work, and it's some very early mornings. All of those go to things that make it difficult to retain labor, and that means you're retaining both quality and knowledge. One of the things about automation and AI is they don't care about what time they're running, how cold things are, and they show up and they can be able to do a job consistently day in, day out. And that's one of the biggest things we're seeing is some of the things that we're allowing our technology to do. You could technically throw people at it, but the problem is you can't in reality do that consistently, day in, day out, and be able to now build a business plan. That way you can actually have your salespeople sell a product that you can't guarantee you can actually produce every day. You don't know if you actually have the labor you need. And so we see that as something that is an aid that can allow the people to be able to do the jobs easier or make it more ergonomic, but also being able to deal with the informational side of it. So that way, if there's less people we need, the people that are left are ones that are making higher wages and being things that are only really bringing value to versus just, hey, I'm just slinging a piece of meat and just shifting something around or just taking a piece of meat and putting it into a box.
So do you see a future in which AI will be able to evaluate a piece of meat and set appropriate pricing for that piece of meat?
Yeah. So there's so a lot of that all comes down to its ability to know accurately what that piece of meat is and all its attributes. And so that's where I definitely see there's a lot of things that AI is going to be doing. Like some of the technology we're doing on the packaging side of it, we're 3D scanning every kind of meat now and weighing every piece of meat and identifying it. Things that aren't really being done today. You can kind of weigh certain cuts and maybe quality team goes in there and does spot checks, but not consistently and not day in, day out, and then taking all that information and creating reports because you can get drowned by data with AI. And it used to be everybody just wants data. But now they realize, well, I've got so much data, I don't know what to do with it, so now I really want information and out of that data. But now we've gotten so much information, people saying, I really want insights. And that's really where we see a lot of this AI, where it can do those insights and look at all the different information every single day, every single hour, and say, what are the trends in the market? What is it actually valued at? And take all of those pieces and being able to, especially with some new technologies coming along, of being able to truly create consistent value propositions on things. Because right now, a lot of stuff in the beef industry, it's human done. It's very subjective measurements. There's some grading things that have a lot of automation built into it, but there's a lot of inconsistencies there. So, but I think AI is going to be able, married with some new technologies, being able to really create good baselines of value of cuts.
Do you have any advice for anyone who wants to go down your career path or be an entrepreneur and they're just starting out?
Yeah, definitely a lot on being involved on actually doing things, especially like in clubs and things like you're involved with right now. So much of doing entrepreneur and things like that is all about being able to communicate, being able to sell an idea, sell a vision, sell what you're excited about. If you have an idea for a business or a process, being able to be a champion for that is a huge piece of that. And then like in college, some of the big things that I love doing is I was on the IEEE robotics team at Georgia Tech and made some great friends there, did a lot of great learning and a lot of just doing things, and because you can learn all kinds of theories, but until you actually do it, make mistakes, burn up some chips, you don't really know. And there's people that you meet there, like one of the people on my robotics team was the co-founder of Peloton, the workout equipment. So you never really know, where your schoolmates are going to go and things like that.
In your opinion, what type of engineering would you recommend students that want to get into the meat industry or in what you do as a inventor? What would you say? What would you recommend they go into?
Yeah. Definitely. So I'm a mechanical engineer in both in undergrad and masters. But in my masters, I focused in mechatronics, and that's one of the things I'm seeing a lot trend in this is that mechatronics is like combining the electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and software. There's very few things that are just only mechanical or only software. There's a lot of things that are now becoming fusion. Think about your toothbrush. Used to be a toothbrush. You just need a mechanical engineer and maybe a manufacturing. Now, it's got motors, it's got charging. She sometimes has Bluetooth telling you how long you've done it. So being able to expose yourself to a lot of different things, even like if you're not gonna like AI, and especially AI is gonna be involved in a lot of these different areas. So even if you're not gonna go in saying I'm gonna write the code or things like that, being on teams and activities where that's part of it and you can start learning the real realities of what it can do, what it can't do, even if you're going to maybe go into electrical or chemical or ag or any of those other things, it's going to allow you to ask the right questions and being able to level set on expectations of what certain technologies can do. Obviously, I'm biased to mechanical, but mechanical is fairly broad, but whichever it is, being able to kind of really touch a lot of those different areas, I think is going to be very critical because everything's going to be a fusion of hardware and software and a lot of AI going forward.
I'm going to talk about video games. So, did you play video games as a child, and do you think they kind of contributed a little bit to you wanting to go into the engineering side of things?
I grew up definitely loving like sim games like Age of Empires and stuff like that. Being able to build out cities and doing all that kind of stuff, and so that really, went to my love of creating things, and stuff like that. My my son's 11 and he loves Minecraft and being able to create worlds and stuff like that. And I think that's great because in the end, being an entrepreneur, you're trying to create something, whether it's software, whether it's business, whether it's a piece of hardware, but just playing and just keeping your mind active on problem solving. Now, whether or not, and so I definitely think that kind of definitely fostered a lot of those games, that kind of creativity piece.
Jumping off Will's question, do you play any video games right now? And if you do, what's your favorite?
So my wife and I do like playing Call of Duty together. And so that's a game that we've done quite a bit. And my kids we do Mario Kart and stuff like that. I don't do as much video game playing, but Call of Duty is one that me and my wife do. They used to have cool co-op modes where they have the split screen, but then they realized you and your wife playing was not the demographic that they were going after. So it's now more multiplayer. So it's a little bit different. But we still like doing that when we have some time.
It's safe to say that engineers have a lot of hobbies. What would you say some of your hobbies are?
I do a lot of hobbies. Most of them are very engineering based, but I do a lot in like robotics when it comes down to video filming, and especially live production, music filming, and robotic technology associated with replicating human motion in the live filming worlds. And so I do a lot of playing around and testing and doing things like that. Also do I've got 12 acres in Edgefield, and so enjoy mowing the grass and just being able. Sometimes a lot of my interests are in engineering, but when your job is engineering, sometimes you get burned out of that. And you just need to have something completely separate than that, even though that can be a lot. So doing outdoor, just yard work and stuff is also one of the things I really like doing.
Do you play any of the the robot fighting? Have you ever done that before?
I haven't. I've not done any of that. Like in the IEEE robotics competitions, those were more just robots that would do different competition things, but not necessarily into the BattleBot kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that will conclude this episode of Carolina's Field, Forest, and Water. Thanks again for our guest, Tyler Randolph, for coming out from Marble. And for more information, visit cmarble.com. That is cmarble.com. My name is William Cutshaw.
And my name's Garland Wilson.
Thank you for watching. I hope you will come back soon to visit another podcast from the South Carolina Governor's School for Agriculture at John De La Howe.